A march in solidarity with the people of Palestine is expected to take place in Athlone on the Cape Flats this morning. Marchers are also expected to take to the local police station, or at least start there, before moving to Athlone Stadium. This comes ahead of the COSATU Workers Day rally set to be held in that area today. In fact, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and the leader of COSATU Zingiswa Losi are among those who are expected to address that gathering. Watching developments is our reporter Mariska Botha, who joins us now live for a sense of how things are unfolding. And Mariska, people had already started gathering in the previous hour for this march. What's the turnout looking at this moment?
You're absolutely right, Ayanda. A little bit earlier there was a little crowd, but it's swelling quite nicely. A number of people have already arrived, including the president of COSATU Zingiswa Losi, who will be speaking to us right now. Ma'am, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a busy day ahead. First of all, what does this Workers' Day mean to COSATU 30 years into democracy?
Look, this is a very significant Workers' Day as we commemorate it. It's a moment for us to reflect back in the 30 years of our democracy. Since the inception of democracy in South Africa, how has the lives of workers changed? But also as we do so and we celebrate the victories, also look into what are the challenges that we have and how do we then pave a way forward as united workers in South Africa, not just of COSATU, because how we're going to then amass the rest of the issues that we have challenges on is when workers are united beyond the color of their t-shirts.
We'll get into that also more in depth a little bit later as the main rally begins. But also COSATU, you've arrived, you're wearing your scarf. Why is COSATU in support of the Solidarity March?
COSATU has always stood with the people of Palestine. We have always pledged our solidarity, and it is even worse now when we have seen how the Israel government has continuously perpetrating genocide against the people of Palestine. And we think that it is correct for the government of South Africa, led by the ANC, to have gone to the ICJ. And we will continue to support the position of South African government, because President Nelson Mandela did say that, and I want to paraphrase him, that the freedom, or we as South Africans, we cannot enjoy our freedom unless the people of Palestine are free. We have seen the genocide that has been committed against women, against young children, and you cannot continue to have an arrogant government of Israel continuing to say that they shall continue to do so until they get Hamas. Who is Hamas? And we are saying, why are you not going to a battlefield? Battlefield cannot be where young women and children are. Battlefield cannot be hospitals. And you are targeting the poorest of the poor. And we are calling for the International Court of Justice to really begin to take serious steps against the Israel government on the acts of dehumanizing the people of Palestine and taking their lives. It is no different from what the International Criminal Court of Justice would always say to the people of the leaders of Africa when they say that there is genocide in different kinds of African countries, sponsored by the West, by the way. And we are saying what the government of Israel is doing is no different from what they said that Putin was doing. And we want the same action that was expected of those courts to do the same justice for the people of Palestine.
Thank you very much. We're going to excuse Madam President. She's got a very busy day ahead. Of course, she's also one of the keynote speakers at the rally that will start a little bit later. But joining us now is the SACP Secretary General, Solly Mapaile. Mr. Mapaile, thank you for your time. Why is the SACP, same question as to the President of COSATU, the SACP in support of this march this morning?
Well, the march is extremely important because internationally we have the crisis of capitalism and its neoliberal ideology suffering a huge moral decay and moral decline that is unleashing wars, the genocide in Gaza, committed by apartheid and settler state of Israel, occupational state of Israel on Palestinian land, supported fully by international capitalism, Western Europe, America, funding this genocide and the wars in other parts of the world, in Yemen, imposing undue sanctions, unilateral sanctions on different countries that differs with their neoliberal economic system. whereas in the sanctions they impose against Iran, against Venezuela, against Cuba, all against other countries that do not support their economic system, and even now against Russia, because they see it as a threat, and they are continuing with provocations of other countries, whether it's China and so forth. So we are even in a situation where workers are celebrating this day in which they scored major victories against this decaying capitalist system under further difficult conditions imposed by capitalism. So it is a platform, therefore, to not only support the people of Palestine and express our solidarity with the suffering people of Palestine who are suffering under this very heavy system of capitalism, but also for workers to free themselves from this particular crisis and therefore to mobilize in solidarity in this regard.
Just briefly, before we have to go, what is the SABC's message 30 years into democracy, your views on what the country looks like?
We want our people to appreciate that when we began this journey, when we culminated in 1994, it was a victory of all of us after many years of sacrifices and struggle against colonialism, over 300 years of colonial rule in South Africa and many years of apartheid rule. And when we achieved that moment, it was an important process where we started a new journey. And that journey became very difficult. Any journey is difficult. It's not so easy. To define it, to reach a particular point in time like 1994 was important, but to undertake that journey to go forward to another destination, it's another struggle. And that's why we're continuing with this struggle. And we say to them, they must not be misled by reactionary parties that are supported by international capital and neo-colonial forces, those that want to remove the liberation forces from political power, and they must retain and understand the sacrifices that other generations made for the freedom that we enjoy today, and defend this freedom by voting for the African National Congress.
Thank you very much. That was the Secretary General, the General Secretary rather, of the SACP, Solly Mapaela, speaking to us ahead of that march that's going to start. I'm just going to step out of shot quickly. My colleague Clinton Surf can show you how people have gathered here. It is raining in Cape Town. You would have think that would have deterred people, but not so. There's a great number of people that have gathered here, and we expect that march to get underway within the next half an hour or so. Of course, not far to walk. It's about 2 kilometers to the Athlone Stadium, where the main Workers' Day event will take place today. Of course, ANC President Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa will also be addressing the crowd, and we spoke to the President of COSATU, who will also be addressing the crowd a little bit later today. But before that gets underway, a solidarity march with the people of Palestine, and here's everybody that's gathered. And with that, for now, back to you in the studio.
Yeah, Mariska, before we let you go, of course, it'd be remiss of us not to speak about the plight of people who live specifically in Athlone and more broadly speaking along the Cape Flats. I'm sure they too will be watching with great anticipation to hear what COSATU and by extension the ANC and the government is doing to try address their plight on this Workers' Day in a context where so many people are desperate to become workers in South Africa.
That's very, very true. These have been some of the most difficult economic times we've seen in the longest time. So there's a lot of pressure on everybody right now, especially the workers, that this day is all about. People are struggling to stay ahead and stay afloat. So you're absolutely correct. They will be watching with anticipation to hear what will be said today, that it won't just be meaningless words, that there will be action that follows that. And for many, many people, 30 years into democracy, this is a very poignant moment. So I would imagine many people would take this day to reflect on what has been and what has happened in the last 30 years and what's to come. We will be taking the time a little bit later to speak exactly to those workers that you are mentioning, to find out from them how they feel about this Workers' Day in particular, as it is your question to the viewers as well. What does it mean to the people on the streets? And we're hoping to gather their thoughts a little bit later. Ahead after this march, we'll be following this procession, of course, and then we'll get right into that to speak to the people that it's actually about, the workers of South Africa. And we expect a number of people to pitch up at the Athlone Stadium, particularly for the May Day rally or Workers' Day celebrations, or then for some commemorations, to find out what the future will hold for them.
Absolutely. We look forward to that reportage. Mariska Botha, for now, thanks very much indeed. Mariska's live to us there from Athlone in Cape Town. Certainly a busy day ahead.